Welcome to Mike's Restaurant, question 2. In the last video we did question 1, and here you can see all the data that we did that relates to that. Now question 2 is asking us to explore a profit that we want to make by changing certain variables. So let's just be sure we understand the question. Let's bring the question back in here. Let's scroll down here, and first of all we are dealing with the 2012 year, so that's our forecasted year, and our intention here is to make a profit of 115,000, and we want to do that by first of all increasing the sales price only. Okay, well, let's set that up. Let's put here question 2. I'm going to use my grid to help me with this. Alright, and immediately I'm going to put in there 115,000 because that's the profit target I want to achieve. Let's highlight some space here and change the decimals other way. There we go, so that we've got some number spacing and make it a little bit easier to read. Alright, so this is question 2. Let's call this one part A over here. And our objective is to make that profit by changing the selling price. This is a little bit tricky because there's some natural things that you're going to want to do around calculating GP divided by margin, because you are so used to doing that, that is not actually relevant in this question. But let's see where that comes out. So the expenses must be 174,516, because those are the expenses that are expected in the coming year. So the next step is to say, well, what's the gross profit going to be? And the way we calculate that is that when we are moving up the income statement, we add. So this is going to be the 115 plus the 174. That's going to get us to a gross profit. Now I know what you're tempted to do now. You're tempted to go and use this margin over here and say GP divided by margin will get us a sales figure. Let's do that for a moment. Let's just do that because I think that's what you might be tempted to do. And let's explore that if we take that number and divide it by that margin, we get a sales figure that is based on an increase in volume, not an increase in price. And the reason why I know that is it won't be an increase in price because the profit margin stayed the same. So therefore it's an increase in volume. We've sold more plates of food at a 29% margin to make this profit. And the question is actually quite clear. The question says, assuming a constant level of unit sales. In other words, we are not increasing the volume. We are only increasing the price. Okay, so let's get rid of this because that's not correct. Delete that. Okay, so how do you increase the price? So let's take a step back from that before talking price. If the volume of sales is going to be the same, what we can conclude from that is that the variable costs will remain unchanged. So therefore we can use the variable costs as per the forecast. And now what we do is we continue adding on the way up our income statement, and we say gross profit plus variable costs gets us up to the sales number. And what we've done now is we've increased the price. Let's test this. What is the profit margin under these conditions? 41.6%. So this is interesting. If it's our intention to get a profit of 115,000. We could get that by increasing the profit margin from 29% to 41%. And therefore we wouldn't have to sell any more food, we would just make the extra money based on the increase in sales price. The question you've got to ask yourself is, would the customer be okay if you increased your profit margin by that much? And are they likely to make those purchases? I would suggest not. But for now, we have answered question 2a by increasing the sales price only. Question 2b requires us to reduce the variable costs. So let's set this up again. Our intention here is to make a profit of 115,000. The expenses are 174,516. We add on the way up. Add those two together. So everything here is in fact the same as here. Our objective here is to change the cost of sales in order to get that profit by keeping all other variables the same. So what that means is our sales will remain the same for now. No extra volume, no extra price. Now we need to determine what would the cost of sales be if this was the case. So this is pretty straightforward. This must be the sales amount minus the gross profit, and that's going to bring us to a variable cost that we need to achieve. Let's highlight this in yellow because that's what we were working with here. A variable cost that we need to achieve in order to make a profit of 115,000. Now I'm going to do a little calculation here that's going to say, what is the reduction in variable costs from there to there in order to achieve this profit? Okay, let's do this here on the side. Let's put an equal sign in here, and let's say 406 minus 284. That's going to get us the numerical difference between the two, and we're going to divide that by where we're coming from, the 406. That will tell us, Alt HP, when we change it to a percentage, that we would have to reduce our variable costs by 29.9%, let's call it 30%, in order to make the profit of 115,000. That's quite a sizable reduction, reducing our variable costs by 30%. We need to ask ourselves, would it be possible to achieve that on its own? I suspect not. That might be too much to ask of our suppliers. But nevertheless, we have answered question B here. Let's copy, paste, and call this B. Alright. Great, let's go on to question C. Question C is asking us to change the expenses in order to achieve a profit of 115,000. So here I'm going to start off at the bottom with 115,000. That's the objective. Let's paint this one yellow because that's the one we want to change. And then these three are going to be as per our original forecast here, minus the cost of sales. Sales minus cost of sales gets us to a gross profit. So it's saying, what if we achieve this? What do we have to change this number by so that this one becomes 115,000? And that's what this grid has done for us. So now, this is also quite easy once you've got this in place and you understand the question. We could say the gross profit minus the profit tells us what the fixed costs would have to be in order for this to work out. Now that is a substantial reduction. From 174 down to 52,000. let's do a little calculation here to work out what is that percentage decrease. 174 minus 52 gets us the numerical difference divided by where we are coming from. Tells us Alt HP, turn it into a percentage, we would have to reduce the fixed cost by 70% in order to make this profit. I would say that is a substantial stretch for the business to be able to do that. It's highly unlikely. So let's step back for a moment. In question A, we increased the price in order to achieve this target. In question B, we reduced the variable costs in order to achieve this profit target. And in question C, we reduced the fixed costs in order to make this profit target. So what we've done here is we've tested each of the variables. Now in reality, what would we do? We would say, well, let's increase the price by some amount to be determined. Let's reduce the variable costs as best we can by some amount. And for the fixed costs, again, let's reduce these by some amount. There is an ideal combination that puts all of these together in order to determine how to achieve this profit. That's the essence of what comes up in question 4 later on. For now, let's leave this as a conclusion for question 2, that if you were to be changing one variable only, it's unlikely that you would achieve your profit target. So what we want to do is a combination of everything, and we're going to determine later what that best combination is. I'll see you in the next video.